Welcome back, kids. Welcome back to Brett Breaks Things. It's a pleasure to be here once again. Second live week. We're halfway through our second live week. It's been my absolute pleasure. I'm really starting to feel myself a little bit and sinking into this role a little bit, and apparently some of you guys are enjoying it. I'll get to that in a second. But first, the most important breaking news, and there's a lot of it. Most important breaking news. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. It's my mother's birthday today.
Happy birthday, Brett's mom.
Happy birthday, Mom. I know you're watching. My biggest supporter, my parents. Happy birthday. And I know my glasses are a little darker right now. I just came in from outside. I've been dealing with this since I got these glasses. I got these glasses almost a year ago, and I finally went and got those self-changing, the adjustable tint that automatically adjusts with the light. Problem with this is, if it's real sunny out, which it often is in Florida, I'll come out, I'll walk into a building, I'll walk into somewhere, and there'll be people there, and they'll be like, oh, Brett thinks he's so friggin' cool wearing these sunglasses indoors. I'm like, no, I'm not cool. I swear I know I'm not cool. It's just taking a while to fade back, I promise. So if you see me coming in, it's me. I just came from outside. I don't think I'm cooler than anybody else. I'm not making any particular statements on my future being so bright. It's the tint. It's the auto tint. All right, let's get that clear.
It's the auto tint. It sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
It does.
But it's the auto tint.
It does sound like a Seinfeld episode. It absolutely does. Scotty, you went
Yes.
I'm very jealous.
I did.
You guys see maybe you guys might see I'm wearing my Wu-Tang shirt. This was a gift from my buddy Scotty. Scotty got me a gift. He went to now, is this going to be the final tour where all of them are going to be there?
This is supposed to be the final Wu-Tang tour as a full group nationwide, which this is the first time they've done their final tour. So I'm expecting probably like 3 or 4 more eventually, knowing like Rolling Stones and groups like that do multiple farewell tours. So, but yes, as of right now, this is officially their last tour.
Now, you sent me some video from this. First of all, that was a giant venue. I'm not used to seeing Wu-Tang play at giant venues like that.
Right.
I haven't been in as many concerts as you, but it looked like a giant venue. That was in Tampa, right?
Yeah, it's where the Lightning play, the Emile Arena, I believe it's called.
How was it?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, first off, the area that they have it in was beautiful. I mean, like a little cool downtown area, and yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it was 16,000 Wu-Tang fans. All, it's funny because like I remember going to the shows years and years ago, and we were all younger, and now it's like all like gray hairs, and
oh man,
it's
dude,
hilarious.
You're not lying. The last Wu show I went with Scotty, my back was killing me so much. It like legit dug into my enjoyment.
So they do an intermission. They did an intermission in between the opening act, Run the Jewels, and then Wu-Tang coming out, and then they do a couple breaks where they're showing like movie clips or promos for things that they have coming out on their own. So it's like chances where you get to sit down, and everybody just takes the opportunity to sit down because your lower back and your legs,
yeah, we're all 50 and 60 years old. If you're a Wu-Tang fan from the beginning, I mean their inception was right around 90, 91, 92,
92, yeah, 93.
Yeah, so we're getting old.
But great show, yes.
I'm super jealous. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for the shirt. Couple throwaways. The Pacers, man, they're up 2-1 in the NBA Finals. If the Pacers should pull this off, this will be the biggest upset in NBA Finals history. The Pacers themselves have never won a championship. I think the last time they were in the championship was 2000. They lost that series. They're back with Tyrese Halliburton in this inception of the Pacers. They're on the cusp of history. I think the Panthers are tonight. They're up 2-1. Against the Edmonton Oilers, so I'm going to kind of keep you apprised on these championship series. I do want to say this. I want to give Scotty a little pat on the back, and maybe myself. I'm going to break my arm real quick, pat myself real quick. We hit a milestone on YouTube, 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. Our numbers on Apple are good. For a show that's just a week and a half old, we're hitting certain milestones on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, and I want to thank you so much. And to the people who have been contributing to the GoFundMe, I mean, you are the backbone of what we're doing right here. And I'm humbled by your support. Just go to GoFundMe. Brett Breaks Things in the search bar. Some people have had some trouble getting there. When you go to the GoFundMe, there's a search bar in the GoFundMe. Don't try to put a backslash. Go to the GoFundMe, go to the search bar, capital B Brett, capital B Breaks, capital T Things, and it'll come up and you can donate, and thank you very much. Okay, enough of that. There is actual breaking news. Now I'm going to show you a video of this, and I know a lot of you probably have heard about what happened in India. Now I'm going to just say, if you're sensitive to tragedies, videos of these types of things. This one isn't particularly egregious, but if you're sensitive, don't watch. Yeah. I mean, just a complete tragedy. A complete tragedy. That was Air India Flight 171. It is a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. I'm going to circle back to that in a second. It was bound for London Gatwick Airport from Ahmedabad's Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport. The plane was carrying 242 people, 230 passengers, and 12 crew. 169 Indian nationals, 53 British nationals, 1 Canadian national, and 7 Portuguese nationals. I like to put a comedic tone on a lot of the stuff I do. This is absolutely tragic, and it makes me very, very sad, as it should everybody. And it's a very obvious statement that it should make you sad. And what's even sadder about it is it crashed into a hostel for doctors. There is a hostel where doctors who are studying at the BJ Medical College right there nearby, there's a hostel that they all lived in that got crashed into. So there are obviously casualties, okay? 204 bodies have been recovered from the crash site. Among the casualties, 5 doctors were killed, 50 of the doctors were injured, but there was 1 survivor, reportedly.
At this moment, 1 survivor. Ahmedabad Police Commissioner now telling ANI, speaking to ANI on a phone call. Ahmedabad Police Commissioner says, GS Malik, the police have found 1 survivor in seat 11A. 1 survivor has been found in the hospital and is under treatment. Cannot say anything about the number of deaths yet. The death toll may increase as the flight crashed in a residential area.
So when we report on these things in America, it's a little more toned down, right? And if I had seen that report of that survivor in America, it probably would have been like 204 bodies reported. There is reportedly 1 survivor. We'll get to confirm that later. Next story. And that's India Today. That is how I want. If I survive something like that, that's how I want it reported. There's a survivor. Holy crap. I mean, the dude was out of his skull about this survivor, and the graphics are flashing and the music's playing. Yeah, let's celebrate the 1 survivor a little bit. I enjoyed the contrast on that. The pilot issued a mayday call to the air traffic control shortly after takeoff, then no further communication, and it crashed. Now, I mentioned it was a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Okay? 787 Dreamliner. To any of you, are you thinking, where do I know that particular, where have I heard that model before? Why is that in my mind? What is that sparking? I'll tell you what it's sparking. And look, I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist. Okay? No, I don't believe the Earth is flat. Yes, I believe the moon landing in '68 was Kubrick's greatest piece of cinematic achievement. I'm kidding. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's a guy named John Barnett who is a whistleblower, a Boeing whistleblower in Charleston County. It's North Carolina. I believe it's North Carolina. I think that's where that is. This guy, John Barnett, worked for the Boeing plant that creates 787 Dreamliners. He made a big deal out of being a whistleblower. He talked about, allegations of the plant's practices, okay? Safety issues, including discarded metal shavings, potential problems with oxygen systems, other things like that. Then all of a sudden, he committed suicide, okay? He committed suicide in March of 2024. He worked at this Boeing plant in 2013. He waited a bit, then he became a whistleblower about what's going on at this plant. It was a pretty selfless act. If everything that he says is to be believed, if you believe it, I saw the interviews when he was actively whistleblowing. I believed it. Well, guess what? This 787 was built in 2013 at the plant in Charleston County that John Barnett was speaking about, that he was warning us about, that he was accusing of faulty practices, faulty parts. I'm just going to put that out there right there. I'm not going to stick on it forever. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there. Yeah, we don't know on that, and it's important to know the investigation is underway. No investigation has been started linking this Boeing with that crash. No investigation there. There is an investigation obviously underway on what exactly caused this crash. So let's wait for that. Let's wait for that. Let's wait for the investigation to complete on what actually caused the crash. And then maybe we can start looking elsewhere. But in my opinion, this John Barnett suicide was exactly like the Jeffrey Epstein suicide. Again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I don't know how many of you out there actually believe that Jeffrey Epstein, under the watch of 2 federal guards in his prison cell by himself, hung himself with nobody noticing and couldn't stop it. I don't believe Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, and I don't believe John Barnett killed himself either. And I'll move on. And I'll move on from there. Pardon me. So the Quinnipiac polls, the new Quinnipiac polls came out. I just wanted to get into some of these numbers real quick. If I have to go into the next one, I'll start with it, but I really would rather not try to get through this. Quinnipiac polls came out. They were conducted between June 5th and June 9th, 2025. 1,265 self-identified registered voters with a margin of error of plus or minus 2.8% were polled. 26% Republican, 28% Democrat, 36% were independents, and 9% were otherwise. So let's just dive into these real quick. I love poll numbers. I like Quinnipiac. I like Quinnipiac quite a bit. It seems to be fairly accurate. There are places that you can aggregate polling. If you go, it's off the top of my head. There's one site in particular that aggregates like the 38 most reputable and dependable polls in the United States. Something a number, something 38 or something like that. It's a number. I can't remember. I'll get it for you. But of those groups of relied upon polling, Quinnipiac's right up there. Let's start with the big ones, and then maybe I'll get into it in the next segment. But let's start with the big ones. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Donald Trump is handling his job as president? Now, when I say these polls, I want you to put them in the context that I did when I started reading these polls, and that is, how is this going to affect the midterms? Can I glean at least a little bit the outcomes of the midterms coming up? And I especially want you to pay attention to the independent numbers, because as you know, they really go a long way on deciding these elections. Republicans are going to vote Republican. Democrats are going to vote Democrat. You can shave off one way or another, minimal margins, but most of the time, that doesn't do it. It's the independents, the average American, the ones that aren't plugged into CNN or Newsmax or MSNBC or Fox News, the ones that vote on their wallets, they vote on the optics, they vote on what's going on in their lives, and do not identify, not only just as a Republican or an independent, or a Republican or Democrat, don't really identify when it comes to the culture war in general. Those are the percentages that I'm looking at to try to glean what might happen going forward. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Donald Trump is handling his job as president? In totality, 38% approve of the way Donald Trump is handling his job, and 54% disapprove. Now, again, you look at the Republicans and the Democrats, we are so tribal, we are so divided, we are so consolidated in this culture war that it's really tough to get any type of insight when you look at Republicans versus Democrats on how they feel about these things, especially in the way of Donald Trump. But it's the independents. A total of 38% approve of his job. A total of 35% of independents approve. 35, less than the overall total. 35% of independents right now approve of the job Donald Trump's doing. 54% disapprove. That's independents. That's independents. Do you approve of the way Republicans in Congress are handling their job? This one feels big to me. As we approach the midterms, this one feels big to me. 32% of total people polled approve of the job the Republicans are doing. 61% disapprove. In terms of independents, 24% approve of the job that Republicans are doing right now. And 68% of independents disapprove of the job Republicans are doing. That to me is telling. And one of the things that's telling me is that your culture war isn't as popular as you think it is. It's not reaching as many people as you think it is. And today's optics are not really working out for you.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. You're back with Brett Breaks Things, because democracy doesn't defend itself.
Okay, so we're diving into the polls. Real Clear Politics is the one that I'm suggesting you'd go to get that clear. If you want to take a look at polling and other political surveys, Real Clear Politics is really good right now, and it does include some Quinnipiac stuff. So most Americans right now, do not approve of the job Republicans are doing in Congress. As you know, somebody on the left, you might get kind of excited about that, and that's fine. You can see that as a positive sign going into the midterms. We're not quite there yet, obviously, but a lot can change. But you can see that as a positive trend. But temper it. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Democrats in Congress are handling their job? These numbers ain't good. These numbers ain't good, kids. Now, the good part about it is we're not in charge, okay? So a lot of what people are disapproving of from the president and the Republicans cannot be put on the Democrats' shoulders. You know, it's not on them necessarily. And you may disapprove of a lack of pushback or a lack of an effective defense against all of these executive orders. I mean, we're really leaning on the judicial here, right? We're really leaning on the judges across this country at different levels to curb this influx of unconstitutionality coming from the executive orders of the president. Like, you can't really look to the Democrats to do much about this. There's not a ton they can do. All they can do is stay together and on message and on point together and not fall apart at the fringes like the Republicans are doing, with 13 Republicans right now saying they're going to vote no on this big ugly ass bill in the Senate. Like that's them coming apart at the seams a little bit. All we can do is not do that and stay together. But do you approve or disapprove of the way Democrats in Congress are handling their job? Not good, man. Total polled, 21% approve of the job Democrats are doing. 70% disapprove of the job. And it gets worse with the independents. It gets worse than that with the independents. Only 16% of independents polled feel the Democrats are doing a good job. 75% of independents disapprove. And I'm just jumping over the Democrats and the Republicans who identified as such. Their polling numbers, I mean, you know what it's going to be. It's going to be tribal. It's going to be down party lines. There's no surprise there, so I don't even want to waste my breath with it. This one I found interesting. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Robert F. Kennedy is handling his job as Secretary of Health and Human Services? Total 38% approve, 53% disapprove. Of independents, 36% approve, 55% disapprove. But there was some more in-depth polling on that I thought was super interesting. Voters who were asked who they trust the most for guidance when thinking about how they decide whether or not to get vaccinated for them and their family members. 44% said their doctor. It sounds reasonable. 28% say themselves. It sounds less reasonable, but very American. 21%, and this is a little distressing because of the attack on the CDC and the cutting of CDC funding, and of course the CDC being demonized during the COVID outbreak. Only 21% trust the CDC in this, and 5% say they trust Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in their vaccination choices. Isn't that your big deal? RFK Jr.? Isn't that your whole deal? Vaccines? They don't trust you, nor should they. You're a kook. You're a kook. Why would anybody trust you? A few more. Is your opinion of J.D. Vance favorable, unfavorable? 35% in total think it's favorable. Their impression of J.D. Vance is favorable. 48% say unfavorable. Among independents, it gets a little worse for J.D. 31% of independents have a favorable opinion. 46 have a unfavorable opinion. There's a couple more, and I'm going to move on. There's a couple more that I found a little interesting. In general, how satisfied are you with the way things are going in the nation today? Very satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, and very dissatisfied. Only 11% of those polled were very satisfied. 24% were somewhat satisfied. 17% were somewhat dissatisfied. And this one's telling, 47% are very dissatisfied with the way the nation is going today, June 5th through June 9th. Not Biden's administration right now. We are, over 100 days into this administration. How are you feeling about how it's going right now in America? 47% dissatisfied. That's not on the Democrats. They control nothing. That is on the people who are controlling what goes on in this country right now, and that is the Republicans. Do you think the Republican Party cares about the needs and problems of people like you or not? This one's dicey, right? Because the needs and problems of people across the parties and across America will differ. There will be plenty of Democrats who are doing well financially, but are still wholly dissatisfied and feel like their cares are centered towards undocumented immigrants or our positioning in the world stage or the corruption in the office, disregarding how they're doing personally, right? So it can be a little misleading. And of course, to juxtapose that, how many Republicans out there are paycheck to paycheck, about to lose their health care, not doing well, but are loving these ICE videos, right? They're loving the imagery of the National Guard coming in and the Marines coming in and putting a stop to all this violent activity by these immigrants in LA. So if that's what they really care about, then they're going to be happy, right? 36% say yes. Now, this is the Republican Party cares about the needs. This is the Republican Party. Do they think the Republican Party cares? What I'm referring to. Yes, 36% say they do. 61% say no. 61% are seeing it pretty damn clearly. The Republicans do not care. They do not care. It's a promise. It's a promise. They don't. Do you think the Democratic Party cares about the needs and problems of people like you or not? 40% say yes. 56% say no. That's better. That's better. I'll take it. Now, this one's funny to me. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Donald Trump is handling immigration issues? 43% approve, 54% disapprove. It's almost the same in the independent category, but I could just picture some Republican, some MAGA Republican getting that phone call. Ring, we got a poll. How do you feel about how Donald Trump's handling the immigration issues? Buddy, I've been waiting for this call a long time. I approve. Like, how many people got super excited to tell that pollster just how they feel about how Trump's handling immigration right now? The polls continue, but you see where it's going. You see where it's going. And overall, what I took from that is independents are not feeling this administration overall. Independents do not feel that the Republicans are doing a good job, hear their needs. Overall, independents are not approving of the way Trump is handling his business, do not approve of RFK, do not approve of J.D. Vance, do not approve of the way immigration is being handled. again, there's a lot that could change from now to the midterms. Okay, a lot can change from now to the midterms. One of the things that might change is in terms of a breaking situation that's now getting the light of day. When you heard Linda McMahon was going to be the head of the Department of Education, it may have struck you a certain way. It may have struck you a certain way. I know how it struck me. The wife of a carnival barker is going to be the head of our education. I mean, wrestling fan or not, you know who Linda McMahon is, but more importantly, you know who Vince McMahon is. And this is his dutiful wife. This is his partner in crime. And that's not just a turn of phrase, partner in crime. I mean, allegedly. But in terms of crime, Linda McMahon was embroiled in a sex abuse scandal involving WWE. That's not spin. That's not opinion. I'm not trying to do a hit piece on Linda. This is what it is. And I'm giving you this background on Linda McMahon before we get to the sound and the all-out attack on education in this country. And that is what it is. But Linda McMahon, she was embroiled in this controversy because she and Vince hired a man named Melvin Phillips, who later was found to be sexually abusing ring boys and young boys, and I say boys because they were under 18, many of them, who would set up the ring, help the wrestlers do boys, throughout the arena in terms of pre-show. Now, this case, there were plenty of witness testimony. One person said she let a pedophile run through her company. This was the sister of one of the alleged victims. She knew better. It was her duty to report this to the police and have that man arrested. She didn't have him arrested. They fired him for 2 weeks and then hired him back. 2 weeks later, after they knew full well what he was doing and believed the reports coming in about him enough to fire him, they then waited for it to die down minimally and then hired him right back. Phil Mushnick testified that Vince McMahon had said, Linda and I decided this was wrong. That was before they fired Phillips. Only to rehire him weeks later. He was returned by Linda, Vince said. Returned by Linda. Okay? And she put a caveat. We'll hire you back, but you can't hang around with little kids anymore. You can't hang around with little kids anymore. And this is bringing up an issue with lawmakers and critics because of Title IX, which Title IX protects children in terms of education and the educational system. It is protecting the children from abuse and mistreatment. People are saying this flies in the face of Title IX. Not to mention, she is wholly unqualified. No experience in the education. And this is from a current education department employee. This is a slap in the face. No experience in education. And now she's linked to this child abuse cover-up. And there's a documentary about it. You don't believe me? Go check out the documentary about Vince and Linda and this scandal, because they get into it in depth. And I got to admit, it was a bit shocking. It was a bit shocking. Maybe a little more than a bit shocking. So this administration has a lot to say about education. We'll play that next.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, we need a coffee break. Now back to Brett Breaks Things, smashing spin, silencing the noise, and keeping it all facts. No fluff.
Now, yeah, that's a little biased to me, right? Like, I could bring up the past of everybody, but I feel like right now, it's not just that I want to, paint Linda McMahon in a negative light. I don't have to do that. She's painted herself in a negative light. I'm just reading the facts. But I feel like it's important context when people say how unqualified she is for this position. It's not just her lack of experience in education, okay? She has abuse allegations, and they are allegations. And by the way, I did mention she was the wife of Vince McMahon. They are separated, maybe over this, who knows? But, you know, when you talk about how unqualified she is, when you take it to the water cooler and you talk about how unqualified she is because you heard how unqualified she is, don't forget to tack on the sexual abuse allegation to children, okay? I feel like that is important context. Her lack of protection of children, if you want to put it in a certain way, her lack of protection of children, rehiring that gentleman back, knowing what he had done. Yeah, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about the agenda. It's all about your objectives over everything else, including the safety of children. Keep that in mind as she is going into the hearings, her confirmation hearings for head of Department of Education. Now, on to the unqualified part, right? I think I've explained why it might be an issue, her having anything to do with children might be an issue. But the unqualified part, I feel like, is kind of paramount, right? So let's get into that, as she was grilled a little bit in a hearing.
Two really quick questions. Do you think that Holocaust education in our schools is a DEI program? There's no card for that. That's just yes or no.
I can look at it whatever card
Holocaust
I choose.
education, is it a DEI? You can have a press conference to say whatever you want. I just need a quick answer to
Your
this.
soliloquy
Is Holocaust, because this is my time, is Holocaust education a DEI program?
No.
Is African American Studies a DEI program?
I think I answered that with one
I'm
of the
asking
other
it again.
callers. Listen, we should be
Just
able,
yes or no?
We should be able to teach
My
courses in their
point is
entirety.
they are DEI programs, both of them, because students need diversity, equity, and inclusion to understand their environments. So both Holocaust education and the teaching of African American history are important, which is why the state of Connecticut requires it in our social studies curriculum. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't support one without supporting the other. And looking at what happens in the schools and actually deferring to teachers, parents who are on curriculum committees, local boards of education in states who actually do the hard work, and listening to what they say would be incredibly helpful in this role.
It's time to move on.
So that was Rep. Johanna Hayes out of Connecticut's 5th, and that's significant because Linda McMahon herself is from Connecticut. And yeah, she's getting excited, and she can't help herself from getting a little excited because she cares. Obviously, she cares. And she has a great point. How do you teach about the Holocaust and Holocaust survivors without teaching about diversity and equity? Okay? How do you do it? How do you talk about African American studies, the history of African American struggle in this country? How do you talk about that without talking about diversity and equity and inclusion? How do you do it? She won't answer the question. I'm just saying, in terms of teaching our children and getting them prepared to be the next generation of Americans, can you leave the culture war at the door for just a little bit? Please, I'm begging you. But she can't. She can't just answer the question. But she's not just unwilling to answer the question. She's pretty unqualified to answer these questions. Now we're going to hear from Representative Summer Lee out of Pennsylvania's 12th.
That I would like your thoughts on, simple yes or no, if this is a legal DEI. An example, would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
That
to
was a
cite,
specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was an
for you-
incredibly
for
specific
you to
example.
submit
I named
those
a
in your
specific book.
questions, and I will look into it and get back to you on them.
Thank
I'd
you.
look
How
forward
about
to
a
answering them
school having a
directly.
voluntary celebration for Pride Month?
Well, I think that,
Voluntary.
well, let's make sure that in our schools.
yes or no?
that we're looking, no, it's not.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest. The question about Ruby Bridges, a little unfair, right? Like, it's not, I don't know a bunch about Ruby Bridges, but I'm not the Department of Education. But to expect her to just have information about Ruby Bridges on hand to defend herself with, that's pretty, I mean, it doesn't feel exactly fair to me to expect that out of Linda McMahon. But that being said, Linda, you should know about the Tulsa Race Massacre. You should know about that. Everybody should know about that. Okay? But not just not knowing about it, it's the indignant nature in which I don't really have to answer your questions. I don't have to prove to the American public that I should be in this position. I don't have to prove to the American public my qualifications. You ask me a question, I hit you with, filler. I hit you, I just fill it in with a little bit of indignance, a little bit of culture war. I've seen my contemporaries here getting questioned by these Democrats, and they also don't answer the questions, so why should I? Nobody does. Nobody ever answers the questions in these hearings. Ever. Because why should they? They don't have to. And she doesn't as well. Now, there are people fighting for education in this country still, and I told you that a lot of what they're doing in this administration, our real only buffer is judges, the judicial system. That's the only real stopgap we have to control this administration, and that is true in terms of the Department of Education. Now, as you know, the Department of Education faced major cuts by DOJ, okay? Firings and cuts across the board while they implant a completely unqualified head of the Department of Education. A judge in Massachusetts last Thursday, however, issued an injunction blocking the Trump administration from dismantling the Department of Education and ordering the fired employees to be reinstated. Thank you. As Judge Myung Jung wrote, the department cannot be shut down without Congress's approval. Okay? So it's a little bit of good news on that front. Little bit of good news, right? The judges still, some have our back. And I don't mean the Democrats or the leftists back. I mean our Americans back, our children's back. That's who the judges, some of them have right now. The radicalized, weaponized judges that they are looking to create legislation to go after. As we speak, they are looking for ways to legally go after these judges that have anything dissenting to say about anything this Trump administration does. But right now, the war on Harvard continues. Kristi Noem accused Harvard of fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party on its campus. And in April, this administration froze $2.2 billion in federal grants to Harvard. The war on Harvard is raging. And of course, Ms. McMahon had something to say about that, right?
And yet my tax dollars are going for about $9 billion right now. I understand a lot of that is for research, good research, by the way. And universities should continue to be able to do research as long as they're abiding by the laws and are in sync, I think, with the administration and what the administration is trying to accomplish, but primarily abiding by the laws. And when we looked at different aspects of what Harvard was doing relative to anti-Semitism on its campuses, they were not enforcing Title VI the way it should be. And we had conversations with President Garber, and I expected that we would have more, but Harvard's answer was a lawsuit, so that's where we find ourselves, right now. But it is, I think the president is looking at this as, okay, how can we really make our point? And what are the things that Harvard and other universities are doing that we have to call attention to?
So Linda has fallen right in line with this administration's culture war and, perceived Christian values, in terms of the schooling of our children. And she knows the assignment, man. She knows why she was put in this position. I mean, again, like JD, these are loyal foot soldiers who will carry the brand and the messaging to every single aspect of this administration. Anywhere you can implant a head of any of these departments that will stay right on our culture war messaging, that has value to us. In this instance, it is egregious how unqualified she is. It's egregious. Now, that was Fox. No, that one wasn't Fox. We've got some sounders from Fox News. We've got some other departments, heads of departments in this administration who also have things to say about Harvard and our education. We're going to hear from Stephen Miller. We're going to hear from Kristi Noem. We're going to hear from Caroline Levitt on this. And, of course, we're going to hear from Donnie himself. Why not? He has a lot to say about Harvard. He has a lot to say about Harvard. Why Harvard? Why institutions of higher learning? Don't forget, Donnie loves the poorly educated. Donnie loves the poorly educated. And Caroline Levitt, she especially understands the assignment. What we're going to hear from her really resonated with me. But the war on education, it is on and raging.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Brett breaks things because someone has to.
On themselves. They have promoted and allowed violent activity on campus. They have allowed anti-Semitism, participation with CCP and Chinese infiltration and influence on their campus, and they haven't protected their students. So we have given them multiple opportunities to share criminal activity with us, backgrounds on these students, to let us conduct the oversight into this program that is our responsibility, and they have refused to do so. So today I sent them a letter that said they will no longer be allowed to participate in this student exchange visitor program, and that's up to 27% of their enrolled students. So it's significant. Any foreign student that wishes to get an education in this country that is attending Harvard and not participating in this criminal activity, they will have to find another university to go to, because Harvard has chosen instead to not protect their students and to allow this kind of violent and discriminatory action continue.
She keeps talking about violence, right? Discriminatory violence, 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 violence. We have to get you super upset about what's happening at Harvard campuses. That's why we're pulling this funding. We're pulling it because you are offended. You at home are offended by the violence on Harvard campuses. There have been heightened tensions on the Harvard campuses due to protests related to the Israel-Gaza conflict, as you guys know. It's widely reported at this point. There have been a few incidents of harassment, doxing, and threats online and in person, right, affecting both Jewish and Palestinian descent. There have been reports of those. There have not been any reports of physical assaults, maybe a few minor injuries that were unconfirmed, because we wanted to be fair here, but nothing official, and no serious injury to anyone on campus as of yet. None. No violence. Kristi Noem, you're a liar. You're a liar in service of this culture war. You're a liar in service of the war on education. And Harvard, they are the picture in the bullseye that you're shooting at. They're the ones that you're imagining, you're envisioning as the representative for all higher learning that we are going to attack. And speaking of all higher learning institutes, take heed of what's happening to Harvard. Fall in line, right? It reminds me of when Randy reported on a story about Putin, and one oligarch of his major oligarchs who control all the facets of Russian life. One oligarch he had arrested on his yacht and thrown in prison, stripped him of all his money and assets. And that was a message sent to the rest of the oligarchs. Stay in line, you stay wealthy, you stay in power. You fall out of line even a little bit, this is what happens to you. We know Trump wants to be Putin. We know he does. I don't have to convince you of that. He's in awe of the man. And another Putin tactic has been assumed by Trump. We're going to go after Harvard. We're going to hit them hard. And the rest of you, Yale, Princeton, Cornell, Columbia, Brown, I'm naming all the Ivy League schools because they are the example of the highest of learning, right? We're going after you next if you don't fall in line. This is a message sent loud and clear, and a furtherance of the attack on education in this country. Right now, Trump had plenty to say about Harvard.
I mean, people with 1,600 in their boards don't get in, and They're letting people in, and they're bragging about how they're teaching them basic mathematics. Where did these people come from? So we have to look at the list, and Harvard has to understand the last thing I want to do is hurt them. They're hurting themselves. They're fighting. You know, Columbia has been really, they were very, very bad what they've done. They're very anti-Semitic and lots of other things. But they're working with us on finding a solution. And, you know, they're taking off that hot seat. But Harvard wants to fight. They want to show how smart they are, and they're getting their ass kicked.
Is anything I'm saying ringing true when you hear that? What'd I just say? Warning to other schools. Columbia was doing the same type of stuff, but now they're falling in line. Now Columbia's working with us, but not Harvard. We got to show you what will happen. They're fighting us. They're fighting. They want to fight.
We'll see. I don't know. I don't know. Harvard's got to behave themselves. Harvard is treating our country with great disrespect, and all they're doing is getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. They've got to behave themselves. You know, I'm looking out for the country and for Harvard. I want Harvard to do well. I want Harvard to be great again, probably.
I want Harvard to be great again, and it got cut off a little bit, probably. So that probably, I'm guessing he's attaching to, was Harvard actually ever great? Is that what is he casting a little doubt on? Probably they were great at one time. I don't know. Probably they're getting their ass kicked. That's how you drag higher learning into the muck. Using terminology and verbology like this, they're getting their ass kicked. This example of higher education, they're getting their ass kicked. What are you talking about, man? This isn't one of the UFC fights that you were at while the LA riots were breaking out. They're not getting their ass kicked. They're getting their funding pulled by you. They're getting smeared in the media by you and your cohorts. They're not getting their ass kicked. Of course, Stephen Miller, and we've got some stuff on Stephen Miller I hope we're going to get to tomorrow, okay? But I'm going to play a Stephen Miller clip from right now, and this is the furtherance on the war on education, and I've mentioned you got to hand it to these guys. This administration, these foot soldiers, they fall in line. They know the messaging. They understand the assignment, and they are on the same page with this stuff.
Children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values for schools that want federal taxpayer funding. So as we close the Department of Education and we provide funding to states, we are going to make sure that these funds are not being used to promote communist ideology. For any nation to be successful, it cannot teach its children to hate themselves and to hate their country. So these are a few of the areas in which President Trump has fought the cancerous, communist, woke culture that was destroying this country, where we were led to believe that men were women, that women were men, that racial discrimination was good, that merit was bad, and that safety and physical security mattered less than the feelings of liberal ideologues.
Yeah, because ideologues. I want to kind of break down what he's saying there. Okay? He's basically saying, yeah, we're cutting from the Department of Education because they were giving money to the states equally, regardless of how we felt about what was being taught in the classrooms or what wasn't being taught. You know, in the past, the Department of Education would provide a large amount of funding to schools throughout the United States, in all the states. And what he's saying is, we, the Trump administration, we will control the flow of money. If you are a godless blue state that is allowing kitty litter in the classrooms, you won't get your money. But if you're in a red state and you're jamming the 10 Commandments into every classroom, we agree with that. You get your funding. We will support that. We will support that message. We will support that. That's not an ideological difference right there. He's telling you very clearly, you godless heathens, you won't get funding. We will not be sending kids in your state to your schools to have to deal with transgender children and kitty litter. And God forbid they learn about what we did to the Indians, or they learn about slavery in its totality. God forbid. No. This will be a Christian nation again. You heard him. Men are men. Women are women. Christian values. You peddle in that, you get all the funding you want. And who will teach your children in the blue states if they pull funding? Private schools will. And who oversees what's taught in private schools? Nobody. Nobody. They will teach as they please. That's not dangerous at all.
They'll try to repair the narrative, but Brett Breaks Things will be back tomorrow to break it all down.